Welcome to the Schmooze, Calgary's weekly community podcast where we bring together the voices, events, and stories shaping Jewish life in our city. I'm Don Shapiro with Jared Shore. Pull up a chair. Let's schmooze.
Stacey Leavitt-Wright. I never heard though that name prior to about 3 weeks ago. Never really had to pay attention. What happens in different cities happens in different cities, but the strength, composure, and just pure strength of will that I saw in the CEO of Jewish Federation of Edmonton was so impressive. I immediately became a huge fan.
Yeah. Well, I've had the pleasure of knowing Stacey since she started as CEO and but the last couple weeks she really showed um what a true dynamic uh strong leader she is. And we've had a few people on the show, Don, and this just goes with the territory who are out there doing the work for the community. And some are volunteers, some are professionals, but let's acknowledge the fact that it's not easy. It's not easy to speak for the community right now. Stacey goes and speaks in front of the police commission last week. She is the lone voice for the Jewish community with 20 people there willing to say the worst mistruths about Israel without hesitation, and they've got the room. And Stacey, the lone voice, a voice of clarity in front of the commission. I mean, that was a big moment. We're going to put that in the show notes. She's had other uh, big moments this week speaking on behalf of the community, but you're right. Such a wonderful leader, and Edmonton has really needed her. And I think the thing that I loved to see was as she discussed the open letter, we go through on our chat with her the groups that signed on,
Right.
and the tide that turned in Edmonton over this particular issue. I mean, uh, our adversaries can push and push and push, and at some point, they actually wake people up to how nefarious so much of what they are doing is.
No, you,
And
you
this
have
was
a
just
Yeah, I agree with you, Jared. Like you believe that there's a line that shouldn't be crossed, and then slowly they keep crossing the line, and then after a while, the line is just so far down you don't even recognize where it began. I mean, you talked about this, Jared. There was an actual terrorist attack at City Hall. There was, protesters in the neighborhoods in Edmonton. We're not talking Toronto. This happened in Edmonton, but this is the situation that seems to be the catalyst to Jewish Edmonton really working together, taking a look at the situation, all the allies coming together and saying, maybe now it's just gone too far. Hopefully there's some, and from what she said, and one of the things that we didn't really focus on, but I was probably most interested in was it appears there may be a mea culpa coming from the mayor. But who knows?
I'll believe it when I see it. I mean,
Right.
a lot of because Don, an apology from the mayor is in some ways an admission of guilt. And if he has an admission of guilt, he will hear from his supporters. He will hear from those 24 organizations that called out the mayor. And I'm just not sure he's got the strength for it. I mean,
Yeah.
let's not forget Jyoti Gondak did never apologized for what she did. I mean, we talked with about our conversation with Rabbi Mark Glickman about him bringing her to Temple to answer questions. She never apologized because it actually takes a person with strength of character to apologize. I will believe it when I see it. I don't think Andrew Knack has it in him. I don't think he's a strong enough character.
Yeah, and I think that it really does go to show, and one of the things that we talked about throughout this was, there maybe not in our communities, in the Jewish community in Edmonton or in Calgary, a massive difference, but between the political ideals of each city are much different, and that's represented in our political representation. And I think that that plays a major factor into some things. And I think that one of the most pointed questions was she more surprised by the dissidents to Chief Dreichel or the supporters? And I think it landed on the supporters. So that was the more surprising outcome. So I think you take a look at that, and it's sad, really. It's shocking to just stand by a group of people and not try to demonize for anti-Semitic purposes, right? And I think that I'd love to do another episode with you, Jared, about the absolute whatever it was that happened over the weekend at the NDP convention, because I wasn't sure if I was watching satire or not. But having a federal party at the end after they announce their leader, and there's a whole discussion about that, the only flag waving on the stage was a Palestinian flag. What has
Yeah.
happened? Where have we gone? And it just goes back to leaders like Stacey that are able to stand up in a hostile room, and she did suffer quite a bit of harassment at that event,
Yeah.
to stand up and speak without fear. And I'm grateful to her and all people who take on that role, for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can't forget that Edmonton is the place that elects Heather McPherson by a landslide every time.
That's unbelievable.
So yes, the political reality is certainly different there. But Don, getting back to the outcome of this, and we talked about the line shifting, given that public opinion has really been to support the police chief. In a city like Edmonton, that is not insignificant. That is
I
not insignificant.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that they just took it one extra step too far, and thinking that they could just do whatever they want, say whatever they want against this community, and it was one step too far. And again, I don't think that we get to that conclusion without strength of character that we have in some of our leadership all across this province. And I'm so grateful that we had an opportunity to highlight it.
absolutely. Imagine Edmontonians actually have a concern about how to deal with crime and maybe even terrorist attacks at City Hall. They'd like a police chief that's actually informed, well equipped,
Yeah.
professional.
Yeah. Folks, this is a great episode. We're so honored to have spoken to Stacey. And I think, Jared, both you and I are off to an Allied Voices for a Strong Canada event later on. So without further ado, we're going to put the episode out right away. Thank you all for being here. And this is going to be one heck of a schmooze. Thank you for listening. Every once in a while, an event happens, and we just happen to see it happen on social media, and we start talking. Oh my God, I'd love to have this person on, and then we realize, well, why don't we just ask? And it is with that setting we have Stacey Leavitt-Wright, CEO of Calgary, or I'm sorry, of Jewish Federation of Edmonton, and it's exciting for a couple of reasons. One, we really do want to get your perspective on some of the things that have happened recently in Edmonton. What's going to happen in Edmonton, politically in the future. I know from my perspective, as a Calgarian, I always saw Edmonton less as a sister city in Alberta and more as the adversarial sister in Alberta. But understanding those perspectives and specific challenges that Edmontonians face that we, might be ignorant to down south here. But with that, I'm really excited, and Jared and I are really excited to welcome Stacey Leavitt-Wright. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here and have this conversation with you guys today. Thank you for having me.
Great. So, Stacey, we had a great opportunity to talk with Councillor Mike Elliott a couple weeks ago as the firestorm over the police chief, was raging. So we're going to talk about that for sure. But I've known you for a long time and work closely with you. But tell our listeners, who you are, what you do,
Sure.
give everybody a little briefer on Stacey Leavitt-Wright.
Well, thank you, Jared. Yeah, so I've been living in Edmonton with my husband and our three daughters since 2008, 2007. Uh, Enough time to say I'm an Edmontonian now. And in 2021, I took over the role of CEO. That was in January, so mid-COVID, completely different job, completely different environment, and I've been around since.
So, well, is this something, I'm always curious when so many people are active in the community in so many different ways. They volunteer their time, their resources, everything. And then some of us seem to enter these roles, which really can have an impact on that. So I'm kind of curious. I'd like to kind of go back to little Stacy. And kind of, where did you go to school? Where did you grow up? What was life like? Were
Yeah,
you, was there any, um, uh,
sure. I can go into a
were
little
you
bit of
within a
that.
Jewish community throughout
Yeah.
your life, or did you kind of look at it from the outside looking in?
So my formative years were in Montreal, and my family spent 5 years in Toronto, moved back to Montreal. I didn't have the privilege of going to Jewish day school, but I was really grounded in my Jewish values and my connection to Israel from camp. So that was very formative for me. And then went to Israel my first time when I was 17 from a CJEP program that brought you for the summer. And then over time, my husband and I tried to make a Jewish home and a Jewish life. We lived in London, Ontario, and that's where our three daughters were born. And that's where I felt it hit me that I'm not in Montreal anymore. So if I want a Jewish community and a strong one, I'm not going to get it by osmosis. There's no walking, along Victoria Street or into the Y and really having that feeling. In fact, I was there this weekend. It's kind of funny. I was in Montreal this weekend as a sidebar. Walked through the kosher supermarket, and there's this elderly man walking around munching on matzah, going, "I love this stuff. I could just eat this year round." And I thought, like, this is just such great Passover prep. You just don't hear that in Edmonton walking around the supermarket. But yeah, so in London, I started to get involved as a volunteer because I realized you have to create the community that you want to live in, and you have an active part in that. So we moved to Edmonton when our kids were very young, and I got off the plane and literally walked into the Talmud Torah and became very active on the board there with the Early Learning Center, and just took on a number of volunteer roles around the community over the years. Sat on a few different boards, fundraisers, the whole 9 yards. My kids were in all the different activities and things that are offered. And so became very familiar and acquainted with the community as well. And then flash forward, my predecessor was retiring. It was mid-COVID. My husband and I were supposed to be going to Israel for his sabbatical, which didn't end up happening. And when she announced her retirement, he looked at me and said, I think you might be good at this. Maybe you want to consider this. So here we are. The rest is history,
it's
as they
The rest
yeah,
is
say.
history.
the interesting thing from a timeline perspective is, um, as someone who's been involved in advocacy for a long
Mhm,
time, COVID actually felt like that was the real beginning of the shift.
mhm,
It was, for many years, although we closely monitored and we built allyships and we did all the things to be vigilant about the Jewish community. It was really COVID was really when we saw our allies starting to go very quiet and our
mhm.
adversaries starting to get very loud. And so I wonder if, those early days of your time, I mean, were you just so inundated? Like you talk about how, things changed so much probably come October 7th, but did you have a sense of it even in your early days as CEO that things
So
were
six
changing?
six months, not even 6 months in, May 2021, if you remember, Jared,
Hmm.
there was
Yeah.
activity picking up from Hamas into southern Israel, and then locally, we just saw this kind of groundswell, this new activism take root, and I remember sitting on some Zoom calls with colleagues from across North America saying they've never seen it this bad, and they were
Hmm.
shocked by what they were seeing on the streets, and we were seeing some pretty considerable scary things happening in Edmonton at the time, and I was so unprepared. I mean, I'm laughing looking back, but it was very overwhelming, and it was It's a challenge as a new leader.
Yeah,
No,
I'm
because
still getting my
I
legs, still getting my leadership legs at the time.
right. And I
Yeah,
remember they actually were not insignificant things that happened in Edmonton. I mean, I
yeah.
recall at that time we were starting to see car rallies
Hmm.
and reports at the time of people going through some of the Jewish
Yes,
neighborhoods in
my
Edmonton,
neighborhood.
right,
Looking for
looking
Jews.
for Jews,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. And then I'll parallel this with something that Jared's familiar with. At the same time, my eldest daughter was at McGill as an undergrad, and she just prior to this, so just prior to my taking my position, experienced anti-Semitism on campus in McGill. There's a real precursor to what you're seeing now, but we were all stunned by it. There's a lot going on, and it became quite overwhelming as well, all related to a trip that she took to Israel. So it has some parallels to what happened this past month, but that was at the same time.
yeah, and I think
Mm.
that one of the things that
Yeah.
we've really noticed over the shift that we've seen happen, where it seems that anti-Semitism has just become so acceptable, maybe under the guise of anti-Zionism or just straight up anti-Semitism, that COVID really was the shift, right? That was
Mhm.
in the absence of doing anything else. Let's go online and start listening to
Yeah.
what I call podcastistan. And it just becomes really difficult once you start going down that rabbit hole to overcome. And so, one of the things that I want to get into, and I guess now is as good a time as any. I find that Calgary is much more of a conservative type town.
Mhm.
Um, Even though, maybe around half of our MLAs are NDP, even some of those were won by 7 votes or 30 votes. And it was very, very, very close. In Edmonton, the structure it's massively different. I don't think there was a NDP candidate that lost or that won by less than 3 to 4 thousand votes. So,
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about how the political dynamic works. And I think that all of us, I guess I'm not going to speak on everybody. For me, seeing what the federal NDP has become and looking at Alberta NDP,
Mhm.
I'm not asking for a political hot take here. I'm asking more for an understanding into what is Edmonton like in that sense. Because I can say
Mhm.
broadly that I think that Calgary is a fairly conservative town.
Mhm.
What is Edmonton? Help our the people that might not be as
Yeah.
familiar, or, end up going to Edmonton because it's where the mall is, or go see a
The
hockey game
beautiful
or go
River
on.
Valley, not just a mall.
That's right.
Beautiful River
That's right.
Valley too.
But
People and some
help
protesters.
us understand a little bit of that political
Yeah.
dynamic that's happening over there, and do you feel that it influences some of what you might be seeing on the streets?
Absolutely influences what you see on the streets. And we've got Heather McPherson in Strathcona, strongly supported by Rachel Notley. You've got a very active progressive vote, huge NDP presence, both provincially, and then that impacts the city council as well. So you see that municipally taking root. Not all the city councilors align that way, but quite a bit. Quite a few do. So you see it in the rhetoric, you see it in the online discourse as well, how that takes root, and the influence of the university crowd as well.
All right.
Right. So,
Yeah,
you've got Calgary, which is, certainly we have a wonderful and large university presence,
yeah,
but a little bit different than U of A. So huge
yeah,
academic presence in Edmonton, as well as a far, far greater influence of public servants. So a much
yeah.
greater influence that way. It's just demographically, it's a little bit of a different city. And so your city council looks different. I mean, uh, your voting numbers look different, and thus your city council numbers look different. Um, Provincially, things look different. Federally, a little bit. I mean, Heather
A little
McPherson
bit. Yeah.
but yeah, it certainly plays out differently. Now we
Mhm.
we Stacey, you and I mean, this is a no-brainer for us. And Don, I know you understand this as well, but we are, as much as like on the ice, we hate each other. Um, we're brothers and sisters.
Mhm.
We live under the same provincial umbrella. Um, and so as different as we are, we share a lot. We advocate
Yep.
the ledge together. And so and municipally, when something like this happens to you guys, just as it's important for Winnipeg to be aware of it and Montreal to be aware of it and
Mhm.
for all the Jewish communities in Canada to be aware of it, it's so close to home. So let's get into it a little bit.
Yeah. And I
Um,
will say to that,
yeah.
Jared, as
hmm
Jewish communities, I would say we're very similar politically. There's some differences, of course, but we were so, at least among our leadership, we're so aligned on the
Yeah.
issues and the values, and I'm so appreciative of that because it's pretty lonely as a leader. So it's really wonderful to have these supports, and I think there's greater strength for both of us when we join together.
For sure, for sure, and I think
Yeah.
but by necessity, but it's what we've seen as a Jewish community
Mhm.
over the last 3 years. We have grown closer, and so I know the respect is very much a mutual
Mutual.
feeling.
Absolutely.
Um, okay, so we're in this situation where uh, the police chief is in hot water. Set the stage for us. Tell it from your perspective. How did this play out for you?
Here's the irony also, Jared.
hmm
The weekend prior was when the synagogues were shot at in Toronto.
hmm
Right.
It was quite an intense week. There's a lot going on that whole week. Announcements made about security funding and the Michigan event, but also in
hmm
Toronto, the synagogues were shot at. And your mayor came out and made a very strong, proactive statement on Saturday afternoon. And I was so impressed by that. It was a very quick thing he did to say to condemn it and to say this is not going to happen here. Um, I would never expect that from our mayor.
We have
I would
mayor
love it to
envy.
happen, but
Yeah,
there's a difference between our cities right there.
we're the lucky
Yeah,
recipients of mayor envy.
yeah,
We've got it
yeah.
like yes,
You've
agreed.
got mayor
Okay.
envy. You got mayor envy.
All that being
Um,
all that being said, though, we didn't always have that, right? When we
no,
and I think
not your prime mayor.
well,
Mhm.
this is
Yeah.
kind of the dynamic, and some of the things that I think that we've been talking about. And we discussed it a little bit with Mike
Yeah.
as well. It's when you take a look at the size of the Jewish community compared to the size of the Muslim community, right? I think the numbers or the ratios are very, very similar. I think there's
Mhm.
5 to 6,000 Jews in Edmonton. Is that right? Somewhere in there?
Yeah. Closer to
Calgary,
6,000. And if you
closer,
ask the Chabad rabbi, it's 13,000, but
right?
6,000. Let's go with six.
Let's go with six. Calgary has about 8,000,
Yeah.
and then Muslims is I think 80,000, 95,000 in
100,000.
each city. So it's demographically and politically, we're unimportant.
Mhm.
And so we can be forgotten. And so we can have a Gondek or a NAC come out with these and gain public support. And then that's what makes a Farkas so
Mhm.
remarkable. And I mean
Yes.
that by,
Yes.
worth remarking upon that he does stand for that sort of moral
Mhm.
clarity. Is that what you think it's all about? Or is it more deeply ideological in,
It's more deeply ideological. Also, think of who the staffers are at City Hall. When we talked about, the environment that we're in here in Edmonton, who the advisors are. Um, if I may go there, there's certain other advocacy groups like NCCM who are very active and very deeply tied with, Yeg Muslim Vote, who in the elections in October, had the mayor on record talking about the genocide in Gaza and about actions that he'd be willing to take with the city council. So that's kind of the environment that we're in. And so we had a reporter here become aware of the chief's trip to Israel, and the story was breaking. And that's when my spidey sense got up, and I said, oh, I know what this playbook is, and I know where this is headed. And so I said to the chief, look, if you're going to stand up, he said, I have nothing to apologize for. So if you're going to stand up and you're going to, stand against this because you took a trip to Israel, then we're with you. We've got your back and we'll stand with you because we see what this is about.
And I'm sure the vast majority of our listeners are aware of what had happened, but the quick Coles notes is that Police Chief Warren Dreichel took a trip with police chiefs from across the world to do a training in Israel.
Not even a
Um,
training, a visit. It's a visit,
yeah.
to go engage with their counterparts from major cities. So there's that networking and that environment of being together and just talking about common practice, etc., and being
Mhm.
exposed to some best practice that's taking place in Israel right now, as well as understanding a little bit more about the geopolitics, but just being there and being in the region. And this is a
And
trip that happens every year. It's not an issue in other cities. Although when I did an interview after my presentation to the police commission, here's another story that we can go back to after, but standing in the hallway and, as I said that very line, one of the gentlemen from CJPME was standing at my shoulder, just, piping in and, heckling me. Well, that's not true. And anyways, I won't go there, but yeah,
fun. Yeah. Fun.
fun times, fun
Um,
times.
Okay, so you hear about this, you're
Yeah,
in touch with the police chief, you tell him we support you, we've got your back, we have an
yeah,
understanding of what this
yeah.
was, and we're there to get behind you. Which I'm sure we talk about lonely moments, and he was hung out to dry
Yeah.
by his mayor, among others.
So
We
before
saw.
that, the story
Uh-huh.
breaks. The
Mhm.
social media starts picking up. Yegwave goes crazy, and the comments are going crazy, and people are starting to weigh in a little bit, and they're kind of starting to look to us, and they're starting to come to us for a comment as well. And I'm told that maybe the mayor is going to be making a statement by some journalists because they're excited to go to the city hall. So we made a little kind of a brief kind of 4 tile thing on social media, just explaining where we're at with this and just making our comment on this. And that was supposed to be that. And then we considered doing something else. And I said, no, let's just wait and see what the mayor has to say. And we waited and we waited and we waited. And then CJA helped doing an action alert. So that was to get people to show support to Chief Dreichel. So it wasn't a take action against him, but it was also in response and somewhat to the NCCM take action against the chief. It was, make him responsible, or he's going to have to resign if he can't give a good explanation. And so that, that's where my Jewish, I said, don't mess with the Jewish mother. Maybe that should be the title of this podcast. That's where my mama bear came out. I'm just like, not acceptable. So it's kind of the clause came out, both to defend and protect, I guess. But with that, we just said that this just isn't right. So we had this action alert, and that kind of took hold. It was to give support to him, send a notice to the mayor, to the police commission, to the city councilors, and to chiefs, just saying you support him going, and this is not okay, in so many words. So that happened, and I'm told the mayor's going to say something. And at like 5 o'clock on Friday, as my staff are leaving the office and saying, "What are we going to do if the mayor responds?" Because we're entering into Shabbat, and we don't post anything on Shabbat. And I said, "Well, we're not posting anything. It's not a crisis. It's a crisis if there's a horrible situation, God forbid a security alert, but we'll kind of keep going with it." But we also had planned for an open letter. And one of the things that I noticed from the NCCM action alert was that the currency was that they had 25 or 30 Muslim organizations, that this is what gave it legitimacy, right? Because there were so many organizations. So I said, well, we have a number of organizations here who stand with us and who stand with Chief and see through this. Maybe we should go public with them. And this is a real turning point for me. And I think you'll understand this viscerally, Jared. After October 7th, we talked about the allies that we've built up before, and where was everybody? I was a little nervous to ask some of them. I thought, well, let's see where this goes. And to a T, every single one of them was like, yes, please sign us up. We stand with you. We stand with the chief. We stand against this. We see right through it. We don't like where this is going. These aren't the values that we have here in Edmonton and in Canada. Put us to the letter. So we had the letter go out on the Sunday after the mayor's statement. I was asked by the National Post to do a comment on the mayor's statement. So I kept that, I said, okay, I'll do that there. As an organization, we're not fighting with the mayor publicly. That's not who we are or how we're handling this. Made my statement, and then there was the police commission. And here we are. And we're looking forward to doing a very big welcoming event and a thank you event to those who signed the letter with us. It's an opportunity for us to strengthen relationships with them and build further bridges, and we'll be doing that.
Did you find it surprising? I guess what did you find more surprising? The mayor's condemnation, and then there were, I think, three counselors that jumped on it, or that two counselors, and I believe it was Karen Principe and of course Mike Elliott, that stood by the police chief in the community. What did you find more surprising, the support or the level of condemnation?
Both. The level of condemnation, it was surprising in that they jumped pretty quickly. And some of those counselors we have what we thought were good, strong relationships with, to the point where they could have easily texted me, called me, reached out to any of our other leaders, Jewish Family Services, and even some of them took issue with some of the language in the action alert. So that's what tipped them off or what made them upset. Some of them just started from the get-go. They just bought into this whole narrative. But for those who were given pause, that they didn't reach out and say, hey, this is a little bit different. This isn't, like your community. What's going on here? There was none of that. There was like zero communication. So that was surprising that they would just go, well, surprising, but not surprising, I guess, that they would go forward that way. Mike Elliott was definitely a wonderful surprise. The strength of his conviction, the strength of his statements really was quite reassuring. There was one point where I really felt gaslit along the way. I thought, I don't know, if I can feel gaslit going through this, imagine how our regular community members feel. And Mike's statement just kind of brought me back from that brink.
We had, and I guess I just want to do a follow up on that. We had a couple of, we had our Chabad rabbi, Rabbi Matisoff and Matusov, sorry. I keep saying Matisoff, it's Matusov, and Rabbi Glickman here. And we kind of talked to them about the situation that we had here in Calgary with Mayor Gondek, with the menorah lighting, and we won't, I think we've spoken about that one to death. But it was about the decision to then invite her the following year, which happened, and also the decision by Rabbi Glickman to invite her to a synagogue to, for a discussion. And some people felt that those actions may have normalized the behavior. The perspective was we have to separate the person from the seat. Where are you right now in your relationship with Mayor Knack? And I mean, I'm not trying. This isn't a loaded question. It's more of a base question. Do you consider him Andrew? Or is it always Mayor? I guess that's kind of the question where I'm taking it.
He's still the mayor.
Right.
I do call him Andrew between us. We had a brief conversation last week, and in light of some other things that have happened in the city, the conversation wasn't in response to her open letter or to the National Post column. And I let him know the community is very angry right now and scared, and people are wanting an apology. They're wanting a retraction or an apology. And I'd have to speak to my leadership to see if they'd be willing to be in a room with him.
Wow. And did you get a feeling that anything was forthcoming?
I think he'd be very interested in having a conversation with leadership, and it's something that we'll look at doing. I think he needs to hear not from Stacey, not from the people who do advocacy that he's used to meeting when we do this. Like post Bondi Beach, we did a meeting in our office with him expressing our concerns about security, around vilification of Israel, around some of the events and programs that we have that it greatly impacts, such as Heritage Festival, when we have the Israel Pavilion. It's such an exposed, vulnerable time, right? So we really tried to kind of drill home for him the real world impacts, which seems to have gone on deaf ears. So anyways, I think that he needs to hear from broad community leadership to know that when we say that we're the voice of the community, we truly are. We've expressed, I mean, it was a tongue in cheek, it's a bad joke, but I said, nobody is unified the Jewish community like the mayor has. Like it's it's kind of macabre, I guess, but it really to a T. I haven't heard, apart from the 1% of Jews who spoke at the police commission. People have appreciated our approach, have appreciated the words, are upset with the mayor, are concerned about what this has done, both for Israel and for our relationship with other elected officials in the city, and they don't blame Federation. So we need to convene our leaders. That's our role. And we need to give that opportunity. And I said to him, if we're able to do that, be prepared. You're gonna have an earful.
Good.
So I'm looking at the open letter right now, which was very well crafted. Among those who signed on, for our listeners, the Royal Iranian Canadian Civic Legion, Iranian Canadian Patriots, Edmonton, the Rwandan community, the Somaliland Cultural Association, Stop Hate Alberta, Al Rayyan Society. I mean, you had a pretty broad coalition, a very broad coalition, which should be incredibly encouraging. Now, let's add a little bit of context also. Okay, so a couple of years ago, so there's also the mayor's trip to China, which is part of this story, because the mayor is very upset about the police chief's trip to Israel.
Yeah.
Yet feels totally okay with going to China. Arguably the worst human rights abuser on the planet, but it's okay. A couple of years ago, there's actually a terrorist attack
in City Hall.
At City Hall. I mean,
the first thing I said,
the
first thing I said to the police at the time is my only surprise is that wasn't at the synagogue down the street.
Wow.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So we've got this sort of coloring the context. You now have to you are going to speak to the police commission.
I did.
Correct?
I did.
I'm saying
Yeah.
I'm saying that's what you were tasked with at that point. So tell us a little bit about that experience. Many of us watched it. Can't speak highly enough of the job you did there.
Thank you.
You know what, Dawn? We got to put that in. We got to put a link to Stacey's remarks in the show notes so people can watch it.
But that one was a wild experience. It was wild.
Tell us about that.
So the commission was meeting on the Thursday. On the Monday prior, somebody tapped my shoulder and said, you may want to maybe consider addressing the police commission about this issue. I said, really? I could do that? And that was right. So I speak to someone at the commission and they said, yeah, you just get your application in by Wednesday at noon. And it would actually be refreshing to hear another voice and another side. Okay, great. Put in my application. Things are pretty busy. Things are flying, pretty hopping around our office at the time. There's a bunch of different things going on related to security, related to this issue. The media is showing up. Like it was just this kind of the National Post article I'm writing at the same time. So all this stuff is happening. Didn't have a lot of bandwidth, but I reached out to the organizations that signed on. And I said, if anybody else would want to come out or make a statement, I really encourage you to do so. But we didn't want to inflame things in the city by putting something on our social media that we're going or anything like that, because we thought, if people are watching, then they're going to escalate too. And then somebody calls me the day before and says, you may want to bring somebody with you because it looks like it may be challenging for your mental health. It looks like there's about 20 other groups coming. Okay. So put out some feelers. The Allies for a Strong Canada also put out a message encouraging people to come to the commission meeting. 2 of the Iranian people came. They sat beside me the entire time. Some of my board, some of our community leaders. So that really gave me strength. I had this moment, it's going to sound a little hokey, but just that feeling of bringing the community's voice, like, at all these people behind me. And I was a little bit scared about this whole thing because I just didn't know how this was going to unfold. But women have protected their community for centuries before me. I think of all the Jewish heroines, and I was like, this is my moment. This is what I can do. So I know it's a little corny, but it was really in my heart. And I had this little gold on
Hmm.
my desk, and she's my icon. So there we go. So I show up to this thing, and there are certain activists in the city who are very, very active, very strategic, have been challenging and problematic for our community. One put on a rally on October 8th, 2023, pro-Hamas in this. We didn't even found the bodies yet. We didn't even know what was going on. We didn't have the full picture in Israel, and there he is. So this is a person who shows up draped in a giant keffiyeh, a number of other people who are known to us, and a number who aren't. So it kind of got my blood pressure up for a little while. I won't lie. I was checking my watch. The heart rate was
Hmm.
going. But it felt good. It really felt good to just get that out there and be able to say our piece. And I think it was appreciated. I'm sorry there weren't more of us to do it. Now live and learn. And then afterwards, there's this media scrum that's out in the grand foyer of City Hall, and I go down this narrow hallway where I'm facing two camera people who they fill up the entire hallway, so it shows you how narrow it is. And I'm standing in the middle, and then to my right is somebody coming, one of the speakers, to heckle me and I just looked at them and said, this is harassment. And I thought, if they're not going to do anything about this, then this interview's over. I said, you have my statement. You know where I stand. I can't do this anymore. And I have
Hmm.
subject myself to that. From a safety perspective, I was a little concerned. You just don't know.
And I
Hmm.
think
Hmm.
that just really goes back to you know, the responsibility of being a speaker on behalf of the
Mhm.
community, right? It's that there is a real safety concern to that for, not only expressing your own views, but speaking on behalf of the Jewish community, because,
Mhm.
what we've seen, time after time is we will be a threat for expressing our opinion, like under
Mhm.
physical threat for our safety. I
Mhm.
can drive by a mosque here in Calgary, and I'm sure in Edmonton and not see one single security guard posted. But here
Exactly.
um, I come home. I go to a synagogue here. There's going to be an event tonight. I'm certain that there's going to be some heavily armed
Mhm.
people checking, whether somebody looks suspicious or not. And that to me is, if that doesn't speak to how crazy this is and how we need that moral
Mhm.
leadership from our elected officials, I don't know what else does.
Yeah.
But I will give you for what you said, not only from the moral clarity of it, but you questioned, because I heard most of the other speakers there, and I mean, it's just
Israel was on trial. Israel was on
oh,
trial.
100%. This
Really.
is,
This wasn't just about the chief. This is about delegitimizing and demonizing Israel.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the goal. That was the
Yeah.
purpose. And they went home and they felt great. The commission, I fear, feels pressure as opposed to having received any evidence. Right? They
Mhm.
just feel pressure to conform to something, and that's one of the scary outcomes. But you came in and you questioned that narrative right off the bat. You were asking for what
Mhm.
demonstrable, if negative effect
Yeah.
was there from this visit, please. And it was like, almost, for the love of God, somebody in the world tell me what was
Mhm.
wrong with this, other
Yeah.
than people saying I hate Israel.
Yeah.
And
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 this was brought me back to my daughter at McGill, 4 years ago. And I just thought, this time I can do something about it. And this time I can speak out against it.
right.
So that's kind of what also helped bring me to this moment, because I've lived through it and seen it. Yeah. The commission, for clarification, they're still fully supporting the chief or have gone on this trip, but they are reviewing their travel policies. And that gives me a little bit of pause and concern. What exactly does that mean? Are they going to be making changes to where you can go or who can go? So I think that's something we have to keep an eye on as a community.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I don't think that was the only thing that really happened to you over the last couple of weeks, is it?
No. So at the same time, I knew about this other case there was two arrests were made in Edmonton in December. One was by RCMP Inset. I've had some conversations with them. I didn't have all full details initially. Eventually, I was asked to write a community impact statement, and I was provided some details by the Crown to be able to, help me to be able to do so. And so I provided the statement. And I didn't know at that time that I'd be going to court so soon to be delivering. But all of this stuff is in the back of my mind. As Jewish leaders, we're aware of many things in our communities, or that may be impacting our communities that we're just not talking about just yet. So it's kind of in the back of my mind, and some of the statements that I made, and to make the point, as well as that ITAC assessment that was, I don't know if it was public at the time, that then came out in the Globe and Mail article that just said, we're at a risk of a lone wolf actor doing a major mass casualty attack in Canada. So these are all the kinds of things that are in my head. And yes, so I was offered the opportunity to speak in court this past Thursday about this case and the impact it would have on our community. And so I looked back at the statement and said, oh, phew, I still feel this way. And I was able to deliver that. That was harder for me than the police commission. It was much harder.
In what way? Like, I guess, like
Yeah,
did you
it was
feel
very
that one was
emotional.
performative and one was real? Like what,
Well, they're
I'm trying
both
to
very
understand.
real. They're both very real. The first one, I guess I was up against, I knew what I was up against, and you kind of know that there's a lot of performative actors and activism in the community. And it does have bigger, broader consequences. This was going to confront pure evil. This was my Hannibal Lecter moment, going to just go see this person who expressed all of this. Um, it, I spoke in my Shabbat message about relief. In some ways, I had relief after meeting him. Um, Not the person you'd expect, when you saw them, not the archetype that we're expecting to do this. But it was hard. It was very emotional because I was coming up as close as we could have gotten to some horrible catastrophic event happening. And so there's a lot that's laden with that.
Wow.
Stacey, from our perspective, and where do I see this? Of course,
Yeah.
a little bit in talking with Edmontonians, but more so from what I've seen online. It seems like this was something that actually uh kind of woke a lot of Edmontonians up.
Mm-hmm.
I see
You nailed it.
much more overwhelmingly people saying the police chief, this is not a political thing. Like the police chief
You went on
is
a trip.
learning how to be a great police chief. Our mayor is injecting ideology into City Hall.
Mhm.
Let the police chief do his job. And
Yes.
so it's like, so of course we bear that brunt as the Jewish community and as people who
Mhm.
support Israel, and that's important to us, and that's why we're, as a community, we have a dog in this fight. But all of a sudden, Edmontonians were like, "What's going on here?
Mhm.
This is crazy. We're actually tying an arm behind our police chief's back at a really bad time when
Yeah.
there's lots of threats against all of us."
Mhm.
Is that your sense too? Did you
Jared, you
feel
nailed
like
it.
the city
You nailed
woke
it.
up? Yeah.
Absolutely. First of all, my
Wow.
community woke up when this started
Yeah.
with the chief, and was like, well, and some people at the beginning were saying, well, why are you making such a big deal of this? In some ways, some people
Uh-huh.
got it, but I think those people, when they saw what then started to unfold, it was like, oh, okay. So that woke the community up, and people wanting to do something, wanting to get involved. That's where we're going to this community event, because I had to channel it. It's like, we don't need another protest. We don't need another letter. Let's do something positive. Let's work with this. But yes, the greater community, daily, it's been so refreshing, and I have much more energy now than I did over the last month. Daily, we're getting phone calls, emails, really heartfelt letters from people, and people who are of prominence, just saying, we don't agree with this. and we really stand with your community, and we're horrified by what we're seeing. I had a woman today, I opened up an email from outside of Edmonton, read the National Post, went on to our website, read my statement, and said, what more can we do to support your community? Can I contribute to your security fund? I mean, it's just, I was so touched. And people calling me up saying, I don't like what I'm seeing. These aren't the values of the Canada that I grew up in. It's something that we're hearing a lot of. I think Allies for a Strong Canada has potential membership drive here, because so many people are expressing the same sentiment that they are.
I'm reminded that over 40 years ago, it was Edmonton Federation that took the lead against Keekstra, and the Jewish communities across Alberta unified, and a Holocaust symposiums rose up from the ashes of the hateful speech coming from him. Calgary, I think, not only unified, obviously we all did after October 7th to a certain degree, but we had a double shock where only 2 months later our mayor did what they did at the menorah lighting, and something good rose out of that, our connection, our unity, and in Edmonton, this might, this is the catalyst perhaps for Edmonton at this stage. So let us know, what is the Jewish community in Edmonton? What challenges are they facing now? How are they unifying? I know that Federation here in Calgary is doing a wonderful job of doing community outreach and bringing all the different, I love how Jared puts it, the alphabet soup together, to try and get unified messages, promote each other's events, volunteer lists, so we can all put on successful events. What are the challenges Edmonton is facing right now, like Jewish Edmonton, and what
right now, right now is getting matzah. We are out of matzah in our supermarkets. So if anybody's driving and hears this to Edmonton from Calgary, bring matzah. It's not tongue in cheek, but ask your friends and family, do you need matzah?
we need a freedom convoy. I'll let my people go convoy.
Oh my God.
I love it.
I love it. All right, folks, you heard it here first. Edmonton is in a matzah dry spell.
Yeah.
I don't know if matzah
I think
dry,
most people prepared. I'd like to see this as there are more people buying matzah than in the past. There are more people coming forward and wanting to just have that connection and that expression of Judaism. So I'll tell you, the same amounts came in. The grocery stores have been overwhelmed, and I think that's a good news. So tongue in cheek, there is a bit of a surge here, and we're really trying to build upon that. So this big event that we have coming up, I have a whole new group of volunteers who stood up and said, yeah, we want to do something. Just gave them the guardrails, gave them the budget. They're going to put on a great event. It's going to engage with these allies. We're seeing more people engage in even Shabbat services. I hope I have way too many volunteers than I can handle for Heritage Festival and for Yom HaAtzmaut and all these other wonderful things, the film festival. But there certainly seems a lot of interest and support. So that's exciting. And we have a new Jewish community center that we're in the middle of redeveloping and being able to open later this fall. Say maybe early winter.
Tell us a little bit more about that. Tell us about the new.
So we have been without a Jewish community center since 2012, and we've purchased a building and started redeveloping it. And we're really excited to have a new hub and living room of the community.
That is amazing. That is amazing. I guess I have a couple of general questions. And again, this goes to my ignorance of Edmonton. How many synagogues do you have? Is there a Jewish school, private school? Is there a religious school? Tell me a little bit more about the dynamic for day-to-day Jewish living in Edmonton.
Orthodox, conservative, Reform, and Chabad congregations all exist and have their own standalone facilities right now. The temple, actually, the Reform temple is going to be coming into the Jewish Community Center once we're up and running. They'll be joining us there. The Talmud Torah School is part of the Edmonton Public School Board, but the society runs the additional program, and they are K-6, although they also have an early learning center that has a preschool and daycare that's quite full right now. Don't quote me. I think there may be a waiting list. I don't know, but I know that they're very full.
Amazing.
Drop-in center, Jewish Family Services, Senior Center. They're programming regularly, so there's good stuff happening.
Fantastic.
Well, coming full circle, I know how even given our differences, our communities work so closely together and communicate on a regular basis, both our lay
Yeah.
leaders and our professionals. We also, you know, we share summer camp.
Mhm.
We have so much invested together, and so Stacey, we're
Yeah.
grateful that you are at the helm there. We so admired the job that you did, as tough as it was with the commission a couple weeks ago. Um, your battles are our battles, and we're glad you're there to fight them, because we did see the spirit of our matriarchs there, and
Thank
so
you.
thank you, and Yasher Koach
Thank you.
to you. Now, you mentioned one thing, which was Allies for a Strong Canada. So certainly our Jewish community should know how to be advocates and how to get involved, and that's through great organizations like Stand With Us and Federation's
Mhm.
advocacy work. And
Mhm.
Edmonton has a little bit more of a B'nai B'rith presence. But there are great advocacy organizations
Absolutely.
and ways to get
Absolutely.
involved. But our non-Jewish allies, for those who are listening, Allies for a Strong Canada. Don and I are going to sign off on this and go straight to an Allies event tonight. This is a great organization for non-Jews who want to get involved, not just for the Jewish community.
Mhm.
Certainly, there is a focus on what's going on with the Jewish community, but this is an organization, and we'll have Michael Westcott on at some point,
Great.
hopefully
Yeah.
in the near future, um, to uh, this is an organization that is committed to what Canada should be, what it has been in
Mhm.
the past, and what it has
Mhm.
completely deviated from in the last 10 years. And we're not talking about liberal government versus
Yeah.
conservative. We are talking about the values that
Apolitical.
our kids, that
Yeah.
we grew up with, that our kids grew up with. Where
Mhm.
we have a strong voice in the international community, where we can say that behavior is wrong, where we
Mhm.
can say what it means to be a Canadian. Whereas right now,
What
nobody
gives
has a
us
clue.
pride? What gives us pride to put on
Exactly.
that new belief? Absolutely.
Exactly.
I want to
So
feel that pride. I remember backpacking as a kid, and everybody wanted to have the Canadian flag on their backpack because it was such a point of pride and so respected around the world.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and
And
then we
Allies
fast.
Yeah,
is committed to that. Absolutely.
exactly. Thank you
And then we
both.
fast.
Truly, I feel so propped up and so supported across the country, and it's because I have such wonderful colleagues and now friends. So thank you, and thank you for having me on the show today.
Oh, it was our pleasure, Stacey. And again, we're like I said when I first saw you, this is the first time I actually get to speak to you face to face, and I'm already just such a huge fan of the work that you do, the emotional weight that you carry with it doesn't seem to put you down. It seems to bring you forward and brings out the best in you, and that's all you could ask for from a
Thank
speaker
you.
or a leader in the community. So thank you for who you are, what you do, and how you do it with the style and composure that you do.
Thank you. I'm blushing. Thank you.
All right, folks. Thank you very much to Stacey Leavitt-Wright, the CEO of Jewish Federation of Edmonton, for being with us on the Schmooze. Have yourself a good night.